So hello, everyone. This is our first event for our research cluster, which we've called Venues for Thought Experiments in Aesthetics and Media. This is a research cluster that I am co-directing with my very dear colleague, Kathy Wallerstein, who is the Associate Director of the UC Davis Humanities Institute. Kathy, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello, everybody. So nice to be here.
Hello, Ken.
And we will be having various events throughout the year that will explore the question of what it means to come together in venues that are both inside the university, but also operates transversally to the university. As Daniela and I were talking before the meeting, this is going to be a challenge for us to engage in a conversation between a human scientist, an anthropologist, and two marine ecologists, ethologists, and biologists. The experiment is not new. We have in anthropology an illustrious tradition of anthropologists of science, and we even have incredible ancestors namely Gregory Bateson, who had written a powerful article on cetacean communication in 1966 in the aftermath of the work that he did with the neuroscientist John Lilly. And I know from my conversations with Daniela and Giulia that, whom I will be introducing shortly, that Gregory Bateson is rather popular in ecology and in environmental biology. So let me just say a few things first about the research cluster. The cluster takes as its subject matter intersecting concepts of venue, aesthetics, and media. And it grew from conversations that have been taking place among friends who are now traveling together in this research cluster. Experiencing, interrogating, and conceptualizing the material, virtual, and philosophical spaces in which scholars, scientists, anthropologists, artists, humanities thinkers come together for shared creative and critical thought, along with the aesthetic, affective, and political tasks venues assume, is at the heart of our project. Moreover, the cluster seeks to locate what we call venue work within a larger media ecology. This is an ecology, again, in the Bateson sense of the term, an ecology of organisms, environments, ideas, concepts, but also images. Our work is therefore inspired and animated by a search for an oikos and what it means to talk about oikos today, where pensive souls can carry out their image and concept work, and when they can encounter and study the reveries that traverse and animate them. So the role of the imagination is very important for us. This oikos is a time space of immanence, of inquiry, of experimentation, and not least of imaginative forms of conviviality. So who are our guests today? We have two guests. From the Environmental Biology Department at La Sapienza University in Rome. Daniela Silvia Pace is a researcher at the Department of Environmental Biology at the University of Rome, Sapienza, where she teaches marine mammals ecology and acoustic behavior. Her research activity is focused on marine mammals ecology, ethology, acoustics, and conservation policy, as well as on noise in the marine environment. She's incredibly well published and her work is quite inspiring. And the list of achievements is too long to share with you. Daniela will be joined by Giulia Pedrazzi, a research fellow and postdoctoral fellow, and co-author with Daniela on several inspiring articles around cetacean ethology and acoustic forms of communication. Giulia is an ethologist and a biologist, and she will be joining us as well. So please join me in welcoming our guests.
Thank you very much for introducing us, and thank you to Katharine and all the participants to this very nice meeting. And thank you, Tarek, for organizing this amazing event for us. And thank you very much.
So,
Thank you.
we would like to begin with a brief conversation. It will probably take us 10, maybe maximum 15 minutes. And then Daniela and Giulia will be showing us an incredible set of materials from their research and recent research trips. So the theme of the cluster, right, is the question of venues or spaces, right? We run labs, we teach in classrooms, we inhabit several pedagogical and educational spaces, right? And in each of these spaces, we engage and encounter one another in different forms. The way we encounter one another in a classroom is not the same way we encounter one another in an amphitheater, in the same way that we encounter one another in a lab. So I am very curious, Daniela, to hear a little bit about the kind of spaces or venues in which you conduct your research, and what kind of relationships are at work in each of these spaces and venues, and what kind of forms of being together, of conviviality is at work. Research vessel, classroom, acoustic laboratory, and so on. So why don't we start here?
So I can say that cetacean research takes place in characteristic venues that shape the relationship between people, because like most of researchers, for example, we carry out part of our job in laboratories where we analyze data, we share impressions, opinions, and possible interpretation of the results and of the data that we collect in the field. But a large part of our job is carried out in the field and mostly on a research vessel. So this is a completely different venue where relationship between people change in a very dramatic way, because research vessel is a very small place with a rigorous and perfect coordination between the team, and is a diverse opportunity for people, students, other collaboration to perform something in a different and unusual environment. So spending many hours in a small space, often this takes the relationship to a different level, where many of the barriers that normally we have in the educational environment fall, because you have the chance to experience personal and behavioral aspects of the people that do not emerge when you are in more classic academic context. So working on a research vessel forces you to learn how to manage space and how to manage time, for example, because conditions may change from one second to another. So you have to be very quick in response to the changes and to the challenges in the marine environment. So also the field work requires is physically hard, so requires a very strong motivation, for example, because you spend a lot of hours and days, weeks at sea, and so you are exposed to a completely different environment. You have not your space, you have not your I don't know, electric and internet and other normal things not in a boat. So it's something that you have to face with, and people sometimes are not so habit to challenge in this very new situation. So it changed completely. And also the space, very small space, it shortened the distances between people. So you share experience and you share motivation and other things in a very smooth way. And so for us, this is a very important part of our research activity in the field. And the other thing is that our scientific world is made of sharing ideas, skills, and we are always in a team. So our work is something that is a teamwork by definition. So you have to exchange. So the word is exchange, and the other part of our work is the acoustic. And so the acoustic word is something completely different that involves your senses in a very different way. And our research work cannot be fully achieved without the analysis of other aspects of cetacean behavior and the social structure, ecological characteristics of the environment, and so on. So it's something that you have to have in your mind and to I don't know, to share with a lot of different people with different backgrounds. So that's it.
No, this is very interesting, because this involves also a kind of a transformation of the kind of relationship that we have in a classroom, which are to a certain extent structured by a hierarchical relationship, in a way that you have a professor who is imparting knowledge to students, and students are there to learn something that the professor in question has earned the right, if you will, to produce knowledge while teaching a group of students in a specific discipline. I'm wondering, because I've been on research vessels and boats with fellow anthropologists who will also join us later on this this year, and I did notice that there is this kind of, I mean, first of all, a research boat has, you know, a number of facilities. It has a number of rooms to sleep. It has a very small area to eat and to prepare food and so on. But there are also a kind of a division of labor that takes place on these research boats. What is the difference in hierarchical relationships? But I use hierarchy here not in the sense of domination. I mean, it is, how is the authority of the scientist distributed when you move from the classroom to the acoustic lab to the research boat, for example?
Yes, there is something really very different, because on a boat, I am also the driver of the boat. So
so you are trained. So you are trained as a navigator as well.
Yes, I am a navigator too. So I am the master of the boat. So there is a hierarchical, of course, there is a hierarchical relationship between people, because otherwise the boat cannot navigate without this.
It would be a ship of fools, yes, that would probably think, yes.
Yes, of course. And this is normal, because the strange is that the researcher is also the navigator and the conductor of the boat. So I have these two roles on the boat. So the hierarchical part is related to navigation and to the division of labors for navigation. For research, we always work in team. So one is doing something related to acoustics, one is doing something related to visual data collection, and we always change our roles during data collection. This is very important, because I don't want to train people in a vertical way. I would like to train people in an horizontal way. So people have to do visual and acoustic data collection, and to learn something about navigation and to learn other things. So this is my personal view and my personal opinion. So all the education that I guarantee to my students are related to a different sphere of activities, and not only research in a vertical way, but also other parts that are so important when you are doing research, because research is something related to creativity and imagination, because we have to identify new research questions, developing, I don't know, innovative protocols for data collection. And so this is we always have to rethink about all the things that we are doing in the field, because it's not something written on the rocks. We have to modify and to be able to adapt our view, our choices, and our protocols to the specific situation. And this is something that we required to our students, to be so flexible and to be very reactive to changes that we experience in the field. And so
no, so this is very interesting, and now we can maybe kind of segue into the presentation. But I have one question that I would like to ask you. I'm very curious to know about what does it take to be able or to have earned the authority to navigate. So are these licenses that you have to take? Do you need to? What kind of training do you need to do to become a navigator? And then the second part of the question, which is part of it, and then perhaps you can connect them, is, you know, you spend most of your time in different media, right? I mean, we can understand media in the sense of, I don't know, I'm sure that you go, share some of your research with the news media, right? And that has some impact on conservation policy. So that's one way of understanding medium. Another way of understanding medium is the water that you are surrounded by continuously, right? So you are moving between an aquatic and a terrestrial environment continuously. So you're navigating, in a way, the relationship between those two environments. And then third, you have another understanding of medium or media in terms of the instruments that you use, right? Cameras, hydrophones, and so on. So can you talk a little bit about, maybe just very briefly, about how you become a navigator and these media environments?
Yes. So first of all, I have a really big passion for the sea, and so I love everything related to the sea. So at the age of 24, I decided to become a navigator. So I did a specific training to take the license and to conduct all kinds of boats, and then I navigate a lot to take experience and so on. And because I love the sea and into the sea and on the surface and all the places related to the sea. And so this is the reason why the department assigned to me the research vessel of the department, because I'm the only one that have this kind of licenses, and so I can navigate with other people, and so I can bring with me students and so on. And the other thing is related to the media. So the media is very important for our work as acousticians, because otherwise sound can't be detected without a medium. So is the air or is the water or whatever. And so the medium, the concept of medium for us is for us acousticians are very important. And for us, as academic, as part of the academic environment, we need to also have a sort of third mission, because we have education and we have research, and the third mission is to relate with the citizens and relate with other people that may benefit of the results of the research. So our engagement in this sense is very strong. So we have to communicate through different kind of media the results of our research, and why these results are important for people, because people said me, oh, but why is it important to study dolphins and whales is completely not important for us, for energy, for the environment, and so on. And so we can explain why to study, for example, acoustics is very important, because you can, I don't know, maybe in the future to discover something that you can use as a very sophisticated sonar or whatever. So it's always a practical fall of our research, and also for conservation, because we are in the anthropogenic, in the Anthropocene, we said Anthropocene era, and so we have to face with a lot of different problems that human activities are causing to our environment and to humans too. So we have to always take some species like dolphins and whales, which are top predators, which have a very important ecological role in the marine ecosystems, as model species. So we can use them as models for predict changes and to take some actions to reduce the disturbance that we are causing to the marine environment. But I would like to also ask Giulia something related to this about the media, because we work together, and so I would like to hear a different, more juvenile people to think about it.
Hi, Giulia.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Daniela. It's a pleasure to be here. And well, I fully agree with the media role, and especially on the sensibilization part, because I also experience a lot of people say, "Why are you studying these? I don't care about them, or they're just beautiful, but why we should care about them?" And I think media, in the sense of sharing information, is fundamental for us. And in this year, with social networks, Facebook, Instagram, and whatever, it's much more easier to share information with a lot of people. So we have a great public that can easily connect with us, and that can also share with us information with citizen science. So media as information way of sharing our job are fundamental. And also, of course, media in the sense of water, which is I have to say, strange to work surrounded by water and be in another environment completely apart from the land. This is the feeling that you have when you are on a vessel. I mean, you are outside of the world. You feel that you are in a different media. And acoustic, I think it's amazing, because you can have experience of something that usually you don't see, let's say, because we are based on visual sense. So being immersed in an acoustic world, it's completely different, and you have access of different way of understanding animal that usually you don't experience.
Thank you very much. I think now we are all very much looking forward to your to the second part of the presentation, and I thank you both.
Thank you.
Daniela, there is no volume.
Now good.
We can hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
To hear
Yes.
you, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, but I don't use Zoom at all, so it's very difficult for us to use Meet, and so it's just we have just to understand something. So we are going to share our presentation, and I think that in 25 or 30 minutes we will finish this presentation. It's a very brief and introduction to our work and to the whales and dolphin environment. So maybe at the end we could, Tarek, what do you think about? We could collect some questions or curiosities, and me and Giulia we will present both. So some slides me, some slides Giulia, and so we will share this presentation. So I'm trying to share my. Okay, so please let me know if you are able to see the presentation.
Yes, it does work.
Okay, we hope that the videos and the audio file will work. So, okay, so let's start with who are whales and dolphins. So humans are habits to have and to see whales and dolphins. For example, in the prehistoric writings and designs, you can see the representation, the figures of whales and dolphins, and also in the Native Americans or in the Greek traditions and in the Roman tradition. And also because the whales and dolphins were exploited as a food, and so these species are related to humans essentially for this in the past. And for example, you can see here some rough figuration representation of these, but also in our I don't know, imagination, because some constellations are dedicated to whales and dolphins, and also the myth of Jonah in the Christian tradition, and also during the exploration. So we are happy to see and to have a relationship with these species from the prehistorical world. But cetaceans are part of a group of species that are called marine mammals, because whales and dolphins are mammals. So they are warm-blooded, and they give milk to the calves, and so whales and dolphins are divided into suborders as in the classification way. So we have the Mysticetes that in English are called baleen whales, and the Odontocetes, so the toothed whales, and they are completely different. They are not always not all whales, because Mysticetes are true whales, and Odontocetes, even if the name is whales, for example, killer whale or beaked whale, and so on, sperm whale, but they are toothed whales, so they are completely different from whales. And at present, we have about 90 species related to whales and dolphins, and one is possibly extinct. And the name of this species is the baiji, which is a river dolphin that is possibly, it is extinct in our age. So this is a particular thing because of the fragmentation of the habitat, because of the exploiting of the river. And so this maybe caused the collapse of the population of these species. So whales and dolphins, so now we will list some key traits and the ecological role and the symbolic role that this species has. So whales and dolphins are distributed in all different habitats of the oceans. They are very large, they are long-living, they are very highly social predators, and they feed on a variety of marine organisms, from the little one, which is the krill, which is preyed by the whales, to very large mammals. For example, killer whales is able to hunt and to eat large mammals like seals or other whale species. And they can use a different sound types. And this is really a peculiarity, a specific characteristic of whales and dolphins, because the medium, so the aquatic environment is a very nice medium for the sound, for traveling and for transmitting. So they, during the evolutionary time, this species evolved specific kind of sounds and the usage of these sounds for different types of activities. And they are highly sensitive to anthropogenic pressures and changes, because they are top predators, and they are particularly sensitive, for example, to acoustics, noise, and so on. So these species are endangered. Most of these species are endangered, and so we have to protect them because of the role that we are going to explain you later. So these species habit all over the world, and for example, there are humpback whale, which is the Megaptera novae has a very large distribution, so ranges exceeding 350 million of square kilometers, so very high range. Or ranges are very small, very short, like river dolphins, because are distributed only in freshwater or brackish waters in the Amazon River, or in the Ganges River, on the Yangtze or the Indus, so the big rivers in the world. And also in the Mediterranean Sea, we have some whales and dolphin species, and we have, for example, 8 different regular species in the Mediterranean basin, which are distributed in a different way, related to the shape of the bottom. So we have species which are distributed in the continental shelf, and species which are more distributed in the continental slope, and they can use the pelagic environment in a very different way. So we have these species also in the Mediterranean Sea. And they are very large. And for example, in this, I don't know if you can see my pointer. Yeah. You can see some graphs related to the lifespan in years and the body length and the body weight. And so we can see that these species are very large, related to the duration of the life. They are top predators, in general, top predators that can consume different kind of, completely different kind of prey, from little copepods, which are very small crustaceans, to the krill of the Ophidian species, to the big, for example, squids that sperm whale can hunt, and to other, for example, in the same species, like the orca, the killer whale, you can have some ecotypes which are specialized, for example, in eating salmons, or other ecotypes that are specialized in eating mammals. So they can use at very different level, with different techniques, all the prey that they are going to consume. They are very social. They are highly social. They are extremely social species, because they use sociality, for example, to transfer hunting techniques, to form complex alliance relationships, and to communicate, and also to have, for example, interspecific cooperation, even with humans, for example, in some fishing activities. And they are the female gender is very important for these species because they share babysitting, they can do alloparenting, and so in some species like killer whale or sperm whales, the matrilinearity and the strong social bond between females is completely the most important part of the sociality of these species. In these graphs, for example, you can see the social networks of the different species, and you can see, for example, a network not so polarized, not so specialized in the mysticities like humpback whale, and you can see a more polarized and more strong bonds between individuals, between females in a social relationship. And so this is a very important part because females are the sex in which these species put a lot of effort for be successful in reproduction and in carrying the young. Also, these species are able to generate a variety of sound for different functions, but this will explain you later. And very highly sensitive to human activities, for example, through overfishing, so prey depletion from overfishing, and to chemical contaminants because they can biomagnificate all these contaminants. They are particularly sensible to noise pollution and to climate change as well. And also they are large, so for example, vessel strikes are an important problem, and also all the interaction with humans during fishing are something quite dangerous for this species. Giulia.
Yes, thank you. Now I will briefly summarize the ecological roles of cetacean. So cetaceans are fundamental parts of their ecosystems because they strongly influence their environment, but they are also strongly influenced by it. So this is a two-sided relationships in which they play different roles. They can be predators, as we saw, but they can also be prey. And they can move large amount of nutrients in different areas of the marine ecosystem that are used by other marine species. So we can go on the next one. Yes, so we can see like in more details all the different roles. As top predators, they have the power of influencing all the trophic chain. So this is our strong pressure on marine ecosystems. And here we show a picture that briefly summarizes an example of a simple trophic chain in which we have all the trophic level, because we have a top predator, which is the killer whale, and that we have like a secondary consumer, which is the sea otters, and a primary consumer, which is the sea urchins, and then we have a primary productor, which is the kelp. So basically, this picture represents how the presence of a top predators can change the dimension and the status of a primary productor, which is the kelp, because in absence of the killer whales, obviously we have an increase in sea otter populations that feed on sea urchins. So the number of sea urchin decrease, allowing the kelp forest to grow. But when the number of killer whales increase, so the feeding rate, the feeding pressure on sea otters increase, obviously, their population decreases. And so they are not able anymore to keep the sea urchins under control. And this all obviously influences the kelp. So even if killer whales and kelp are actually very distant in the trophic chain, the presence of a top predator can influence with a top down process all the levels, even the lower levels. So the size of their population is fundamental to keep under control the dimension of their prey and of the different trophic layers. And also, cetaceans have another ecological role, which is the ability of bioturbation. Bioturbation is happens when an animal is able to modify physically and morphologically its habitat. And here we show you a picture of a gray whale. It fed on is a benthic feeder, so it feed on copepods, which are small crustaceans that live on the sea bottoms. And obviously, to look for his prey, the whales moves around a lot of sediments and put back in circulation sediments and water that is used as nutriments by other marine species and modify the morphological features of his habitat. Also, obviously, they can have an important impact indirectly on the movement of nutrients, because they can move a large amount of nutrients, both horizontally and vertically through the water column, because a lot of species feed at the bottoms and then they goes to the surface to breed or to socialize. So when they defecate, they release in the surface a lot of nutrients that are used by small organisms of phytoplankton to grow and survive. And since cetaceans are mobile, strongly mobile species that move also horizontally in different areas of the marine ecosystem, a lot of species are migratory species, so they make large-scale movements. Obviously, they also move nutrients with them because they feed somewhere and then they move somewhere else where they defecate and they bioturbate the habitat. So they move the nutrients which are essential for all the trophic layers. So actually they are food resources for a lot of marine organisms. And also their carcasses are actually, when they die, they start, let's say, a new life, because when the carcass fall on the bottom, it is used as a food resource by the debris change, so by a lot of organisms that feed on the carcass. So the carcass is colonized in different moments by different organisms that by firstly feed on the meat and then feed on the rest or on the bones. So for 100 of years, bones are available for a lot of organisms to feed on them. And they are also very important in locking carbon inside them, because obviously a whale is a big organism with that can lock in his bones a big amount of carbon. So it has also a role in all the dynamics related to CO2 and to amount of CO2 in the atmospheres. So they are important in many different ways in the ecosystems, and a change in the dimensions or in the health of their population can actually affect marine ecosystems and marine environment. And for this reason, cetaceans also are very important conservation targets, because as we saw, they play different role in their ecosystem, so are a keystone species. And they are highly sensitive to human pressures. So they are conservation targets, both because they are sensitive to what we do in the ocean, and also because they are important. So if we want to protect and to conserve the marine ecosystem, we need to protect cetacean species. But they are also important because they are used as flag species, so as ambassador or a symbol of the environmental campaign or of the marine habitat. So of course, for us and for the public, it's easier to empathize with them. So it's easier to sensibilize and raise awareness through using a species that is very fascinating and charismatic, and that we feel very close to us, because they are smart, they are highly social. And so for us, it's easier to ask for mitigation measures and ask for sensibilization and for protection action through them. So they are a very important, a powerful symbol for us, because we need to protect them and because they can raise awareness in the public. Okay, now we skip to a more, let's say, technical part of our research. So this is, we have like two parts of research, a part of on sound and acoustic research and on visual research that we're gonna see later. So in this first part, we're gonna tell you how we use sound, how we analyze sound. So this is our venues. One of our venues, as we were saying before, this is our sailing boats. So we use the boat for surveying our seas in front of the Tiber River in Rome, and studying dolphins and collecting acoustic data. To collect data, we use hydrophones that are in the left bottom pictures, and that are basically microphones that can work underwater. And obviously, we need laptops. So these are all the instruments that we need to collect acoustic data and to analyze them on the field and in our lab. Basically, what we do is we go in the field and with our boat, and we use the hydrophone to detect and record the sound that the cetaceans produce. And those sounds then are visualized on our laptops through the spectrograms. So spectrograms are graphs where we can see the evolution of a sound in time and in frequency. So basically, thanks to the spectrograms, we can visualize the sound, the acoustic signals, and measures a lot of parameters that allows us to characterize it. So we through all the acoustic parameters that we measure, we try to understand what is the functional role of these acoustic signals and how they can change in different contexts, in different groups, in presence of calves, in presence of vessels. And so how they are affected by us and by the environment. And we can use different parameters like duration and frequency that they're gonna be explained in the next videos, because sound is a physical concept that is harder to explain by word. So we use those two videos that explain the first one, what is sound in a physical way, so which are all the parameters that we can extract from a signal. And in the second videos, we're going to see why sound is so useful and effective in the water.
Sound is created by a vibrating object. For example, when a drum is struck, the flexible skin of the drum vibrates. The compression and expansion of the air on either side of the vibrating membrane produces differences in air pressure. The pressure differences generate a sound wave that moves outward from the drum's surface. Sound travels as a wave through a medium, such as water. Sound actually cannot exist if it doesn't have a medium to travel through. A sound wave is an example of a compressional or longitudinal wave. The particles in a longitudinal wave move parallel to the direction in which the wave is traveling. A sound wave alternately compresses and expands whatever medium it is traveling through. The places where the particles are compressed are regions of high pressure. The places where the particles are pulled apart are regions of low pressure. Scientists measure and describe underwater sound using terms such as amplitude, frequency, wavelength, and phase. A sound wave's amplitude relates to changes in pressure. As amplitude increases, a sound is perceived to be louder. As amplitude decreases, a sound is perceived to be softer. The average amount of energy passing through a unit area per unit of time in a specified direction is called the intensity of the wave. Sounds with higher intensities are perceived to be louder. Relative sound intensity levels are usually given in units named decibels. A wave has a repeating pattern. One complete repetition is called a cycle. Frequency is the number of cycles per second. If the frequency of a sound is increased, there are more cycles in a second, and a higher pitched sound is produced. If the frequency is decreased, a lower pitched sound is produced. A high frequency sound has a shorter wavelength than a low frequency sound. The wavelength is the distance from a point on one wave to the corresponding position on the next wave. A sound can be a tone at a single frequency or a combination of energy at many frequencies. It is important to understand the frequencies of which a sound is composed, but also a sound's phase. Phase specifies the location of a point within a wave cycle of a repetitive sound. When two sounds of the same frequency are in phase, their amplitudes combine. When they are out of phase, they cancel each other out. And this is the same principle behind noise-canceling headphones. Sound travels about 1,500 meters per second in seawater. That's approximately 15 football fields end-to-end in 1 second. Sound travels much more slowly in air, at about 340 meters per second. Sound gets weaker as it moves away from the source. To visualize this concept, think of a rock thrown into a pond. You see ripples, but these are caused by energy moving through the water. The ripples generated by the rock get smaller in height as they move away from the place where the rock fell, the source of the waves. The same occurs with sound waves. A sound wave gets smaller or loses energy because it spreads out, or spreading loss occurs, and because some of the wave's energy is absorbed. The ocean is filled with sound. Background sound is the sum of all distant sounds in the ocean. It's called ambient noise. The primary sources of ambient noise varies in different regions of the ocean and can be categorized by the frequency of the sound. Source level is the intensity level of a sound source at a distance of 1 meter from the source. Source level is measured in units of decibels. Sound waves in water and sound waves in air behave differently because of the physical differences between air and water. The intensity of a sound wave depends not only on the pressure of the wave, but also the density and sound speed of the medium through which the sound is traveling. Sounds in water and sounds in air that have the same pressures have very different intensities because the density of water is about 800 times greater than the density of air. Sound levels given in decibels in water are not the same as sound levels given in decibels in air.
Okay.
Sound travels.
Now that we saw what is sound, let's go through the communication, acoustic communication. So in this slide, we briefly summarize what is a communication process that I'm not going to spend much words because I think is very well known for you. But anyway, a communication process is based on a sender emitting a signal that is received by a receiver that modifies its behavior after the detection of the signal. This is the basic communication process, which actually could be much more complex because you can have advertisement, you can have a different environment influencing how the signal is perceived by the receiver, and you can have also third-part receiver through the phenomena of eavesdrops, in which the signal is received by a third organisms that was not intentional, the intentional receiver. So the communication process is very complex and dynamics. And in the acoustics, in the acoustic communications, we're gonna separate odontocetes and mysticetes because they produce very different sounds and in very different ways. So we're gonna speak now of odontocetes and that produce mainly 3 types of sounds, which are clicks, whistles, and burst pulsed sound. Those sounds have very different acoustic characteristics in terms of frequency and duration and modulation and amplitude, because they are used for different purposes. So clicks are used for navigation and for echolocation purposes, while whistle and burst pulsed sound are used in social communications. Here we have like some whistles, a recording of whistles from the Stenella striped dolphins, Stenella cerulea alba. Okay, so as you can hear, there are some whistles, but there are also some like impulsive sound, like click in the background. And we also have some, we also have some other videos. No, we can go on. I thought there was another one. Here we show you 2 videos on sound production and in dolphins and on echolocation.
In basic terms, a dolphin's echolocation works like this. The animal produces a series of low and high frequency sounds that are transmitted through its forehead. After these sonic waves hit an object, echoes bounce back. The greater the distance, the longer the delay in their return. When the dolphin receives the reflected signals, it forms a mental image of the target's location, size, and speed. Echolocation requires several component parts, each designed for a specific function. When integrated, they form the most efficient sonar system on Earth, natural or man-made. Dolphins have no vocal cords, yet they produce a wide range of sounds. The process is pneumatically driven, controlled by the flow of air. Rising to the surface of the ocean, the dolphin exhales, then takes a quick breath. The instant the animal submerges, the blowhole shuts tightly as inhaled air rushes through the nasal passages on its way to the lungs. The engine that drives sound production is the larynx, a piston-like organ covered by muscles. It controls the flow of air through twin passages in the skull, each sealed by a retractable plug. When the larynx is pushed upward, the nasal plugs automatically open and air moves freely toward 2 sets of flaps called the phonic lips.
The phonic lips are the main sound generators, and they're designed to work individually or in unison. When the pressurized air hits the lips from below, they vibrate rapidly and produce bursts of the high and low frequency clicks at rates up to 2,000 clicks per second. It's an action that's been compared to the vibrating lips of a trumpet player blowing through the mouthpiece of his instrument.
Once air passes through the phonic lips, it is stored in pairs of inflatable sacs. When these sacs are full, they quickly deflate as muscles squeeze the air back down the system, past the open nasal plugs, and back into the lower cavities of the skull. Responding to the change in pressure, the larynx retracts, creating space for the recycled air. When the skull cavity refills, the larynx elevates to increase the air pressure. This triggers the nasal plugs to open, and a new cycle of clicks begins.
By recycling the inhaled air, the dolphin can delay having to surface for another breath. That way, it can continue to echolocate for more than 10 minutes. This entire system operates with critical balances and regulation. Every component has to work perfectly within fractions of a second.
Okay, here is just a small focus on signature whistles, because those are very characteristic acoustic signals produced by dolphins and toothed whales. And those are modulated, frequency modulated sound that are repeated in a stereotyped way again and again to convey information on the identity of the emitter. Signature whistles have been discovered in captivity by the Caldwells because they noticed that when an individual was separated from the others of the group, it started emitting these repeatedly these whistles, and those whistles were different for different individuals. Here we show you 2 spectrograms of 2 signature whistles that we recorded in the field in our population of bottlenose dolphins. And as you can see, those are very are repeated whistles in which the contour, so the morphology of the whistle, does not change much. And those are repeated in very short interval of times, less than 10 seconds. There should be also an audio of the
It doesn't work, Giulia.
maybe if you click on the speaker icon on the right, the small one on the gray bar. And doesn't work? Well, okay. Okay, so it's just, well, anyway, it's a whistle as the same as we heard before from striped dolphin, just repeatedly, continuously repeated. And last, we want to speak about breakholes, because those are very still unknown sound signals, and there are just a handfuls of papers on breakholes, so we actually still don't know what they are used for. Researchers hypothesize that they are used in a feeding context, maybe to manipulate prey, but actually we experience in the field that they are emitted also during social context. Basically those are sequences of units that are repeated and that they can be combined to form long sequences of monosyllabic or multisyllabic sounds. And we have a high diversity in our population that it's not common. So let's see if those sounds work. Okay, so those are very fascinating sounds, and so this is part of our research because we want to understand more what they are used for. And that's it. I think it's yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Is it?
Yes.
So it's how much time do you have left on your presentation?
Oh, okay. I can skip some other because we would like to present something related to another species that we were investigated and we are investigating at the moment, which is the sperm whale, which is a mass click producer in a very complex way, and they have a very strange arrangements of these clicks like codas or which is something mutuated from the music but I think that we have no time for doing this.
No, you can take 5 minutes. Do you think you can do that in 5 minutes, and then we can
yes, I don't know, you have to give me some information about the other part of the presentation, which is related more to our work in the field, but I don't know. It's up to you. What do you think about?
I think we can take 10 more minutes for the presentation, and then we can have a Q&A so that we can give an opportunity to everyone to ask questions.
Perfect. So the sperm whale is very particular as a toothed whale because it's able to product not whistle but only clicks, which are impulsive vocalization, and this production is related to a very particular form of the head and particular structures that are inside the head of the sperm whale, which is the spermaceti organ and the junk, which are a fatty part of the head of the whale, and so in the front part click are produced by these which are called monkey lips, and so the sound traveled inside the spermaceti organ, and then come back on through the junk, and so the sound is amplified, and the sound, the click is continuously rimbalzare, is rebound, I don't know.
Bumping.
Yes, in the head of in the melon of the sperm whale, and so the entire click is made by single pulses, and these pulses are very interesting for us because we can estimate the length of the animal, estimating the distance, so between the pulses in using a formula, a mathematical formula. And this is very important because we cannot take the sperm whale to measure the length of the sperm whale or the age of the sperm whale. So this is an indirect measurement that we can do related to these animals. And okay, I can skip this just to give you an information related to the sperm whale. Is a big diver, so the sperm whale can reach 3,000 meters in depth, and during his movements in this completely dark environment, this animal use clicks for orientation and for targeting the prey and to communicate. And this graph, for example, is a diving profile of a single sperm whale, so you can see the when the animal use echolocation to find the prey, and then with buzzes, which are very close sounds, clicks to focalize the prey, and then when use codas to communicate each other. So each part of the diving is characterized by the different arrangements of clicks that this animal is able to do. And another very strange sound that we studied and we published last year, these are trumpets, and trumpets are very specific and particular sound like this. These are very strange sounds, and they were recorded in a very few papers mention these sounds. And in the Mediterranean Sea, we found that sperm whales used male sperm whales use this kind of sounds, and because they are low frequency and repeated, we think that there is a communication function related to trumpets, and possibly the communication between young males. So bachelor groups of sperm whales use these sounds, and so we found this very particular situation in the Mediterranean Sea. And mysticities ways can produce also different kind of sounds, specifically very low frequency sound, and very low frequency sound can travel for hundreds of kilometers in the oceans, and they use these sounds for a lot of different things. But in particular, in the 70s, in 1971, Payne and McVeigh published in Science this very important paper related to the songs of the humpback whale, and these songs are very complex, and there are structures like a symphony. So we have themes, and we have units, and we have phrases. So it's a very particular acoustic arrangement that only males use for attracting females and during reproduction season. And so I would like just to end the presentation saying that we are studying dolphins also to estimate abundance, and abundance we can estimate, not count animal, because we can see animals at surface and they are a very little part of the group that we are able to detect and to count. So we use other methods. For example, we use the mark recapture. So we take pictures of the tails or the dorsal fin of the animals, and so we recognize each individual, and so we can say how many individuals after capture mark and their capture, how many individuals are in the population using models. And this model we use in this paper that you know very well, Tarek, which is Capital in Dolphins. We use this approach to measure the site fidelity of individual in this population and to estimate the abundance of the population. But the marker capture is very important also for measuring and analyze social networking. And so when we know one individual and to another, and we know one individual when is with another individual, we can build a matrix of association between individuals, and we can measure the social relationship and the strength of the relationship between individuals. And we published this work just a few months ago on the 22nd of August, and we found that our population in Rome is strongly based on females, and so is not in the bottlenose dolphin. This species is not so common because it's not a matrilinear species like the orcas or the sperm whales, but we found this very particular situation. So females are so important for this population. So I would like to thank all the research team. We are a big group with statisticians and the other acousticians. So I would like to thank all the people that is collaborating with us, and thank you for your attention. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you very much, both of you, Daniela and Giulia. This was an incredibly insightful presentation, and I've certainly learned a great deal, and I am sure that those who are attending have learned as well. And I would like to before I open up to the Q&A, because Giulia and Daniela and I will have the opportunity to talk further. So I want to give the opportunity to everyone to ask a question. I want to really kind of give you a sense. I'm going to be reading a quote from Gregory Bateson from a very beautiful essay by Bateson that was published in his important Step to an Ecology of Mind. And the article is called Form, Substance, and Difference. And I think the notion of difference is very important. Whereas most anthropologists, I think, kind of created a very clear boundary between the natural sciences and the human sciences, especially in the Boasian tradition in anthropology, Gregory Bateson was doing something quite different. And I think this summarizes it quite well. I have studied the area of impact between very abstract and formal philosophical thought on the one hand, and the natural history of man and other creatures on the other, right? So what I love about your presentation and about the technicality of it as well, which for us is, of course, new material. We are not cetacean researchers, but we are curious about the question of difference across species. So the first remark is that what we call interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity is not a given. This is not something that we just have there available and we can just do it. It has to be created and produced. And I think that's what we are doing, and it will take us time to do it together. So that's the point number one. Point number two is that there is an interconnectedness among the various organisms and environments, including humans and dolphins. But more than that, there is also a conceptual interconnectedness, to use an important expression by the German sociologist Max Weber, which the anthropologist Paul Rabinow insists on understanding. It's the conceptual interconnectedness. When you use terms like duration or instance in your graphs and in your measurements, for me, in my language, it translates as Henry Bergson's, the philosopher's writing on duration. It translates for me as how did early media technology like chronophotography, for example, or early cinema or early sound technology, how is the question of measurement linked to the desire of science to produce knowledge that is trustworthy, right? And then our relationship to instruments is based on whether these instruments confer a certain authority on the scientist, but also on the nature of the result itself. So these are very, very, I think, interesting areas of exploration that I think you are exploring in your own terms and that we are exploring in our own terms. And I think we have some ancestors like Gregory Bateson that can help us create bridges, all the while keeping the difference between the natural sciences and the human sciences intact. In other words, we cannot do this. We cannot think about the contemporary today without these kind of collaborations. So I would like to open up. I think Fiamma has a question.
Yes, just a second, I appear. Thank you very much for the presentation. I really appreciated it. And as Tarek gave already the general approach to the ecologies that we have in mind and the venues, I wanted to ask you very specific questions that caught my attention during the presentation. For example, at one point you talk about matrilineal cetaceans, which is super interesting in anthropology, of course. And but I don't know if you know how that's determined, but I'm curious. But the question would be, do cetaceans prefer, for example, certain voices over others in terms of tone? In the interaction with the human, with the people that are on the boat, for example, or when you do your experience, there is like, it has been done, I don't know, because in the Lily experiment, I think there was something about the voice and the tone of the voice in the interaction with the animal. And then last question would be, if there is a conflict in the both as a venue, in the moment in which you guys have to be together, how do you deal with that? Because it's not easy. And I imagine that the tension is high, that there is a lot of interaction, that nobody has to like each other, or even in the relation with the animal, or the way to relate to the animal, that can be always linear. So how do you deal with that?
Okay, so let's start with the last question because it's very nice, because sometimes this is a problem on the boat, of course, but in my experience, in our experience, you have to be very calm and to take a moment to think about the situation that is going on. And after the critical moment, you have to discuss with the person who caused the problem, who made the conflict, about why the situation was created, and which were the feelings of the person which caused this kind of problem, this conflict. Because in general, it's very important to not overlap between the roles and between the actions during our work. So we can share and we can work together without overlapping, because overlapping normally generate a conflict, and also because sometimes in my experience, students would like to emerge in the abilities and to I don't know, to show which one is better than the other. So it's really important to be calm and not to put other fuel on the fire, and then discuss immediately after the problem, because we have to solve the problem. Otherwise, next time you will face again with the same problem. And but this is my experience, and I don't know if Giulia would like to add something. And something is also related, for example, to the data analysis, and one student said, oh, my analysis is more heavy than yours, and maybe you are more light, you are doing something more light than me, and something like this. But it's important that each person has in charge the responsibility of his or her work and share the experience with the others because they are not a single person. We are a team, and so we have to share problems and success.
Certo, of course.
Okay. Of course. And Giulia, I don't want to, maybe you can talk about the tone of voice and the relationship with the voice, because I had experience with Lou Herman. I don't know if you know him. It was very important scientist in the past, and we did a lot. He did a lot of work on communication between humans and dolphins in captivity. And but we can share with you our experience on the boat, directly with the animals around the boat.
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, from our boat, it's hard, obviously, to determine if dolphins react differently to different people. Also because they produce sound mostly underwater, so it's more of us receiving them than receiving our voices. Of course, they react to noise, so they react to our presence, obviously, but not in a negative way. I mean, sometimes they come close to us, sometimes they goes away. It depends on their behavioral state and the context. But I think in a natural environment, it's still hard to determine if they can perceive our voices, because we are in air and they are in water, so we're just in different mediums. So it's sometimes we can hear them from outside. I mean, it happens that they produce a sound near the surface, so we can hear them actually from the boat. But I think it's it's hard to determine if they can recognize us. I mean, because you have to be in captivity, you have to do playback experiments, so you are sure what the dolphins are hearing and how they respond to you. So from the boat, it's hard.
It's short. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last question was related to matrilinearity. And this argument is specifically studied in killer whales and sperm whales because they form these groups with grandmothers and calves and so on. So females remain all together all the life long in the same group, so they share dialects, for example, or something like this. So, and there is also a genetic relationship with the mitochondrial DNA, which is transferred by females, and so this is a very complex question. So it needs a lot of time, but if you are interested, I can send you, or we can share discussion about it. It's a very interesting part.
Thank you.
Daniela, can I ask you to stop sharing your PowerPoint presentation? I think there are a couple of other questions, but with the, yeah, it's okay. So we had the question from Haley. I think you had a question. Hello? Okay. So there's a question here from Haley. We learned that medium is also an environment for sounds to travel through. Then what is the media in this context of cetacean research that our guests are talking about? Is it the entire audio apparatus, including all the sounds? Or is it another way of understanding so is it a multi-mediated environment? That's the question that that Haley is asking. So okay, so that's one question. Do you want me to take a few questions?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe Giulia would like to reply to this question, or me. It's okay.
So I'm not sure I get the question right. So the question is if the medium is just the water or also the instruments?
Yeah, so I think the question is, if I understand it correctly, is what different understandings of media are involved in this media ecology that you find yourself in?
Well, I think all of them, or at least two, because we have the medium where the sounds travel to, and also we have the media through which we collect the sound. So it's definitely a multi-mediated sound, and also the instruments are also media because the sound actually travels through the media through which we collect the sound.
And I think this is very interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think it has to do with the fact that in the media anthropology seminar, when we read Gregory Bateson's essay on cetacean communication, most of that research was based on dolphins in captivity. So I think the media environment was very different. And in your case, you are working in situ, right? And so I think the question is about what is the difference between a media environment in captivity and a media environment at sea, in the natural habitat.
Well, I didn't work much in captivity because
no one does that anymore. Is it still done today?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it still done today?
Yeah, it's done. It's done. You have like not aquatic parks, but like sanctuary or like protected spaces where you can study cetaceans. So these are not like zoomarine, but more controlled and safe spaces for animals. And I think that the big difference is that in natural, you cannot control anything, basically. So you have to be patient and you take what it comes. I mean, sometimes you don't have animals at all, or sometimes animals don't interact to you or don't produce a sound. While when you are in captivity, animals are still free, obviously, let's say in a sort of way, but you can control the experiment. So you can decide in a sort of way what the animals will do on what you want to do with the animals. In natural, in situ, you cannot do this. I mean, you are just there, and as I said, you take what it comes from the animals.
And also the problem is the space, because we know that the sound travels with through the medium, through the aquatic medium at a certain distance, and the wall of the tanks and so on can alter the propagation, and so the acoustic characteristics of the sounds that animals emit in captivity. And also the sounds are used also because animals can't see each other because they are at a distance, and so they use sound to remain in contact. And in captivity, this is completely not possible. So possibly animals are less stimulated to use sounds during their relationship, of course, because they can see each other, and so on. So also the acoustic properties of the sound are altered in captivity. And I can say this because years and years ago, I did some experiments in a tank in the aquarium, and so we measured a lot of differences between the natural environment.
Okay, thank you. A couple of more questions, and we have Elena.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Okay, actually, it's not really a question, but it's like more, I would like to share an image, as we are in a anti-image lab, and actually maybe is an anti-image as well. I'm sure that you remember during last spring, this terrible fact of this whale, an orca, I don't know the name in English of an orca whale, that was trapped in La Seine in France river. And so the whale was trapped and wandering in a river. So I was very much impressed by your contribution, by your paper about the soundscape, and by all the discourse of the environment pressure and the And this whale actually was emitting cries of pain. I was reading that scientists discovered and was following the life of this whale trapped in the sand by the soundscape that changed. So it's like an anti-image of environment changement, and that I wanted to put here in sharing with the other. It's a very strong image, I think.
You're referring to the beluga who was caught in the sand over the summer,
Exactly.
and then had to be yes.
Yes.
Daniela, Giulia, any thoughts on this?
Oh, yes, it was very sad, of course, to see this whale inside the river, because the environment is completely not the environment for this species, because the belugas are Arctic species, so they prefer very cold waters, and they are highly social, and so they live in groups, and so these isolated animals inside the river was something highly strange, very strange, and the hypotheses for these were a lot. First of all, for example, it was hypothesized that this animal was disturbed by, I don't know, sonars, military sonars, and so it this animal had a disturb or impairment, hearing impairment by this sonar, and so possibly the animals was lost in the environment, but the necropsies of the results of the necropsies are not available at the moment, so we are waiting for the vet and the I don't know, the examinations and the exams that they are doing on the carcass to understand if there were some physiological conditions that put the animals in a completely bad for him environment, or some, I don't know, viruses or bacterial infections. We really don't know why, but the image was very sad, like other images, for example, of in the Mediterranean Sea, of the fin whale without the tails, because of a collision, and so the animal probably died because of this very hard impairment, or I don't know, the gray whale in the Mediterranean Sea, which was a very strange situation 2 years ago. So we have a lot of different cases like this. I don't know if you remember in Italy, in the southern Italy, the Delfino Filippo, which was a bottlenose dolphin inside the port of Manfredonia, and this animal remains for 6 years completely isolated from the others in the port, and had relationship with people, and then died because of people, because people put a bomb for fishing in a legal way, and so the animals died because of this. So there are a lot of cases of these anomalies related to the behavior of these animals.
We have a question. Thank you very much. We have a question from one of our member. Cluster member from Javier Andrade from Bogota, University de los Andes. Does communication take place only within a given species, dolphins to dolphins, whales to whales, or across them as well? Is symbolic communication possible across different types of cetaceans?
I can say that this is possible, highly possible, because, for example, when a beluga whale hear or detect the sounds of an orca, of a killer whale. The animals completely silent. So possibly they are able to detect other species, especially if they are predators. So they recognize the sounds of another whales or dolphin species. And this is present, for example, also in the transient killer whales. Transient killer whales are much lower, with a much lower vocal than the resident killer whale, and this is because they eat other mammals, and so other mammals can detect, but it's a function of the hearing, the audiogram of the species. So we can hear, for example, humans can hear from 20 hertz until 20 kilohertz, more or less. And so each species has this range of auditory abilities. And so they can detect, they can hear other species, but we don't know which kind of possible communication, really communication between them. So the detection of the other species is possible, and it's normal. So I understand if you are a predator that are trying to prey me, but we don't know if they communicate other kind of information.
And thank you. Kathy, you want to ask the question or you want me to read it? Okay, so Kathy Wallerstein asks, I would love to know how the various sounds and songs impact you, the researchers. Does it shift your emotions, your way of feeling, your consciousness or thought processes? I imagine it must be powerful to hear and meditate on these sounds in this aquatic environment continuously.
Yes, it's quite hard to say, because we are scientists and we have to measure everything. I mean, we have the scientific protocols, but we are persons, we are people, and so we always share this kind of experience between us, and we talk about the experience that each one of us has when we are exposed to these different sounds, and we are trying to interpret and to understand why they use this in this context and not this in this other context, and why this animal yes and this animal not. So we always have a debate and share our feelings about sounds, but we are scientists, so we have to measure everything. And but I don't know, Giulia, but in our experience, so each single day when we open an acoustic file, we share our emotions related to these files.
Okay, so we have maybe one more question, and then we will have to sadly end our event, but this is just the first of many, and I know that this is just the beginning of a long conversation. And in fact, the research cluster that Katya and I are co-directing serves as an incubator to foster this kind of conversations that begin with this idea that they are interdisciplinary, and we don't know really what that means. And we need something more durational to pursue the arc of these conversations. And so this is to be continued. So last question, how were you able to study the details of the sound pathway inside the head of a whale or a dolphin before the sounds leave their heads? Did researchers make this discovery from carcasses or from live animals?
So research studied on carcasses, and so they use TAC and a lot of different images to understand, for example, the cycle of the air inside the head of the animals, and so on, not on living animals. In the middle of the 60s, the Russian researcher did a lot of experiments on living animals in captivity, and in particular on bottlenose dolphins. So they studied for example, sleep, which is something that before we didn't know how this animal can sleep, because they need to sleep, but they need to breathe on the surface, and breathing is not like us, it is involuntary. For them is voluntary, an action, voluntary action. So they need to breathe at the surface, so they need to swim to go to the surface for breathing. And so the scientists interrogate them about the sleeps, and so they put electrodes directly in the brain of these animals. So in the past, some experiments were conducted on living animals, but not by I don't know, occidental part of the research, but in different countries where the attentions to the animal well-being and animal welfare were lower than in our countries.
Thank you both very much for a really inspiring conversation. We've learned a lot about the venues where you conduct your research, about the complexity of your media environments, the interesting instruments that you use, from hydrophones to drones to photographic cameras. And I recall vividly the first time I visited you in your university in Rome. It was quite inspiring, and it continues to be inspiring. And I hope this is the beginning of a long conversation. We thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Tarek and Katharine, for inviting us. We were so happy for this experience, so distant from our world. So thank you very much. And we are at disposal of students or other people who are interested in more, to be more in depth in some, I don't know, arguments or topics. And so thank you very much to all people, and to you, Tarek. We hope that we can develop other things and share things together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. That was
Thank you so
incredible.
much.
Talk to you very soon.
Ciao, ciao.